first disc is complete. It came out in fine shape.
All right, let's work. It's the 2020 crop year. My name is Matthew Sliger. That's right, we're out in California planting rice by air. Welcome to the rice fields. Ride with me from planting to harvest. This is California Rice, my friends. You're watching Rice Farming TV. So we have our Case IH 770 tillage discs out and hooked up to our tractors, our 245 in this case, as I kind of mentioned to you in the previous episode of Rice Farming TV. I'm going to take you through the tillage disc, explain what we're checking for, what we're fixing, what we're tightening, what we're replacing, so you guys have a great understanding of how a well-maintained tillage disc can make it through an entire season of rice. 1,200 acres, that is. We've got 4 tillage discs. That means we've got a lot of work today, so let's get started. One of the first and obvious things is we just want to make sure our disc blades aren't worn down too much, that they still have these nubs here, that they're not just completely rounded. Completely rounded meaning they're not going to penetrate and work the ground as well. These are still in great condition. We changed them probably 4 years ago, 5 years ago. That's a job. Now once the wings are folded down, these lock them into place so they don't bounce on the outside edge here. So what we'll do is take the heavy hammer and make sure that the lock is all the way into locking position, and then we'll look under here and make sure there's no gap. Right now it's not locked. You'll see what happens shortly. Now it's locked into place, and we don't want any gaps there. We don't want this to be able to float back out, because that means it wouldn't be locked, and that means that this back half of the gang would be lifting up and not digging, penetrating how we want it to. So we go back here, we can see that there's no clearance. It's locked tight into place, and it's looking good. So we'll check all 4 of those around this disc, okay? We'll also go to each hanger and spin the blades, ensuring that we can't hear any noises or there's no drag, which would indicate a worn out or broken bearing that we would have to replace. Also, we want to make sure that the scrapers here aren't dragging too close to the blade as well, preventing it from turning. The scrapers, by the way, are what remove dirt away from the blade and keep them clean as we're moving them through the field. You hear that vibration? That ringing? That's what we're looking for. That tells us that this blade is tight and in place. If we were to just hear a thunk, that means the blade's loose, out of place, and might go out during planting work. We'll do that to every blade to ensure that it's in place. Let's get in between the blades now and see this. This is a bearing guard. Can you tell how thin that is right there compared to the bottom part right there? It's much fatter here than it is up here. Well, that's because I just rotated it and replaced it. This is what's protecting the bearing from dirt rubbing on it. And you can see over the seasons, this one has worn down thin. So I just rotated it and put the beefier section here. This will pretty much be rubbing through the dirt, protecting this bearing here, which of course is part of the hanger, which is holding and allowing these disc blades to spin. The bearing, that is. And that guard is protecting the bearing. Looks good. By the way, I think it's worth mentioning, just in terms of our production, when we use these tillage discs. We use the plow chisels first to open up the ground. That creates big slabs of dirt and mud clods. We then come in with the tillage discs and break those dirt clods down. So with the tillage disc, we're not going deeper than what we did with the chisel plow. Probably only 6 inches the first pass with the tillage discs, then about 4 inches deep the second pass with the tillage disc. Yes, we do the tillage disc twice, just as we had done the chisel plows before twice. So you can see in this pre-spring prep, this preventative maintenance, checking our implements, we're working in order of our operation once we get in the field, meaning first we fix the chisel plows, now we're on to the discs. As soon as we're finished with the discs, we'll move over to the land planes. But just, aren't these so much fun to watch in the field? Link to last year's tillage disc video is down in the description if you're interested. I replaced the disc on the ground so we can spin the tires, check the bearings in the tires, nuts, bolts, make sure all the tires are in good condition. Larry's tightening bolts, making sure that this thing doesn't rattle apart as we're moving through the field. Now, also very important, we're going to check the entire frame over for cracks. Don't want to have all our bolts tight and have the frame rip apart. Let me show you some weak points that we had repaired in the past through a little welding. Here you can see by the white X that we had marked these cracks, but of course had welded them. Looks like the welds held up. This is a little hanger that holds the hydraulic rams that moves the wings up and down. Weak point. Usually the hangers here, they hold up pretty well, but we definitely want to inspect them all the way around for cracks. That would just be a bummer if this fell off. Lifted the wings up to check cracks under here. So far, no cracks. Well, good news and bad news. Bad news is I don't have any cracks to show you. Good news is we don't have any cracks. Gonna need to air up that tire.
First disc is complete. It came out in fine shape.
So it's on to number 2. Bolts are tight. See, I'm replacing this one because it's so thin there, and rotating this guard because it's nice and beefy. And while I'm down here, I'm going to tighten the other bolts and check for cracks around the hanger. Cool, huh? Hello? 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 So I took the bolt out of this bearing guard, not because the bearing guard was worn down, but because the bolt was worn down. That's what dragging it through the dirt will do after a few seasons. So I'm gonna replace that with a nice new shiny one. Oh yeah, we've made some pretty good progress today on our tillage discs. Let me just take you over here really quickly to the chisel plows because I just want to tie up a couple loose ends. I don't know if you remember on the 3-point, well, we had that crack in it and broken spring. You see that? You see that crack? We're gonna have to replace that spring That just provides the tension on the chisel shank and the chisel tooth. We're going to have to replace that, as I said. And then if we come over here, this, I don't know if we're going to be able to see it because of a shadow, but right here is a big crack in the frame. You can see where we tried to weld it in previous years, but this is where the hook of the 3-point goes in right here, and that frequently rocks back and forth. Probably the impact is what created that crack. This morning, Pop's beautifully, can you see it in there? Pop's beautifully welded it up. Also, this was the broken spring that we replaced. Lots of action out in the equipment yard today. We have completely rearranged everything. As you see behind me, we have hooked up the 3-point chisel plow to the tractor so we could remove those chisel shanks. We're going to just rotate them since we only used 1 point last year, and we're not going to put them on yet because Pops wants to paint the frame. So, yippee. And as far as the last chisel plow that we need to work on, the teeth are still off. It's not primed or painted yet. Blades are sitting over here. Remember I mentioned that we were just going to rotate them, that they've only had 1 season. My water bottle fell. Yeah, we only have 1 season on them. Here, that's the worn side, and this is the brand new good side. So, idea with that is we are just flipping them. Oh, jeez. You know, hope you guys enjoyed this episode around the equipment yard, working on our tillage discs, checking in on our chisel plows. We're moving. We're getting everything ready to start working ground. We got plenty of time too. Only middle February, and you know, we usually hope for an April 1st start date. So stay tuned. We'll get these things out in the field. We still need to work on the tractors, change the fluids, remember? All right, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs. I'll see you in the next one.